just put all this stuff together. I started this in 1956. Here we are in 1972. I was going to make scrapbooks and put some stuff together, and all of a sudden, everything was gone.
Cancers of the colon and digestive system are deadly unless found and diagnosed early. Only one local hospital has the technology to increase the diagnostic viewing area from this 1-inch circle 100-fold. St. Joseph's, recognized for quality in the top 10% among the nation's hospitals.
Hi, I'm Jack Scalia. Each week we'll take you into the danger zone with incredible real-life action and uncensored heart-stopping stunts. Join us every week for a new adventure with the show that delivers, Stunt Masters.
After Saturday Night Live.
Hi, folks, I'm Garth Brooks. When I'm here in town, I watch Hee-Haws right here, Saturdays at 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
WETM TV, Channel 18, Elmira Corning.
Being ordered to evacuate their homes. A state of emergency has been declared. The National Guard has been ordered to assist in evacuation efforts and fortification of the flood walls. Evacuation of the South Side has been increased, with an estimated 4,000 people reporting to Southside High School and Coburn School. Residents are urged to take only blankets with them. You will be allowed to return to your homes as soon as possible. Boat owners have been assisting the fire department's evacuation efforts in large numbers. Based on a 1964 disaster plan registration system, both large and small craft have been put into operation. We understand that many of the smaller boats are too light to handle the current downtown, and some damages have been reported to crafts that have struck submerged cars.
Where are they going? You going for a boat ride? Now you go for a boat ride?
Come on, Joey.
It's chilling listening to those advisories again. We were all caught off guard a little by how fast the waters rose, and they did come up quickly. From Hornell on down through the northern tier, there was flooding.
The cold, hard facts are these. More than 2,500 homes were destroyed. Many thousands more were damaged and would take many months to clean out and repair. The property damage was put at well over $200 million. And 22 people were killed in the Twin Tiers, 18 in the Corning Painted Post area.
We all remember the deaths and destruction, but everyone else remembers something else, too, and that was the strength of the Twin Tiers, the spirit of your neighbors and everyone else as the rebuilding began as soon as the waters receded.
Over the last week or so, we've been asking people in the Twin Tiers to share their memories of the flood with us. We begin by going to Painted Post. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the water was the deepest there, 12.3 feet deep, and that was along High Street. We went to High Street. Jim Nobles lives in the same house where 20 years ago the water was just below the second floor windows. Fred Stull is his neighbor. Tom Stull was a patrolman with the Painted Post Police Department. We sat and talked about the flood and their memories of it.
Yeah, not knowing where our kids were, I guess was probably... We went down to Corning early that morning and we decided to come back. We couldn't get back. And this was Friday morning, and Saturday afternoon we found out the kids were all right, so that was kind of...
Where had they been the whole time?
They took them out of the upstairs window in the boat, and they were... I forget now where we found them, over around Baker Street somewhere. But, you know, that was probably 36 hours. We didn't know whether they were alive or what the story was, but everything worked out fine, so. Getting dead bodies.
How many did you get?
Right down here on the corner. We took an old man and his granddaughter and their dog. She was laying there holding her dog when we got in. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Remember you told me about it?
I can't remember what their name was.
But that was the hardest thing, was going in there and finding the victims of the flood.
Right. And we had the ex-mayor's wife up, found her up on Chemung Street there, so laying beside the house there. The fireman had been there earlier to her place and asked her to leave and said, no, I'm going to stay. She must have finally got scared because she had run across the tracks and she was back of the house on the other side.
Describe what happened the night that the waters really started raging and caught everyone.
Well, I finally got out of Westinghouse about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, just before the dikes broke. And I could get as far as Goff Road and East Corning. I had to turn back because the road was covered with water. And I stayed down in I thought I'd sleep the night away down the garage down in Big Flats, gas station down there. And a sheriff's deputy came by and tapped on the window and told me to get out, that the water was coming up Canal Street in Big Flats. So we went up to a church on Sing Sing Road, and I can't recall the name of the church at this time, and then they needed some volunteers to operate boats to get people out of their houses down in Big Flats. And we had just dropped off a couple ladies, and I can't, the guys I was with escaped me now, I don't recall. And on the way back out, a log came by and flipped the boat over we were in. And I remember floating down through Big Flats and finally got a hold of a tree and climbed up in the tree and spent the night there. I guess the most scary part of that deal was there was trees floating by me bigger than the one I was in.
How'd you get out of the tree?
They eventually came by, the fireman came by in a rowboat and heard my blood-curdling screams and got me out. I did have a life jacket on, but it was dark. It was dark that time of day.
Oh, well, it hit was Friday morning and coming home early Saturday afternoon and finding all my new furniture in a pile with about 6 inches of mud on it. Kind of discouraging.
Flooded just pushed it out of the house, or?
No, it was in the living room, but it was all in the pile, and then the refrigerator was in the center of the floor. Most everything seemed to end up in the center of the room for some reason. I don't know why, but it was a mess.
All three men remember living for about a year in trailers furnished by HUD.
They were setting these trailers up, well, mine and the neighbors. The Rand had a crew, and they sent them down to hook up the gas and the water. So we got the gas and water into the trailer.
And you never got a bill for that?
Never did. No, never did. One fella I got to give good credit to, though, was Gordon Hakes. He had all that heavy equipment, you know, and he came down. He said to the village fathers, he said, you got to have this cleaned up. He didn't say, how am I going to get paid, or when am I going to get paid, or am I going to get paid? Send his boys down, they start cleaning it out. It was a mess. They just throw that whole refrigerator and everything all on the truck.
No hot water, well, no water for a while, and food, and ate an awful lot of that peanut butter from the government. But just things like that, you know, and oh well.
I never seen so much Clorox as we did then, because they brought it in here by the truckload. Everybody was splashing around in their basements.
Worrying about diseases?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sure, because the gas stations, you know, the oil and the gasoline all came down with the water. And that was one of the biggest stenches, was that oil and gasoline. Remember that? That smell, it was a sickening smell. And I think that's the reason a lot of the animals, you found a lot of dead animals, is because they were drinking this water that was contaminated with the oil and the gas and whatever else got in from the river. That's something that I just recall too, is that smell. And it just hung around for months.
I mean,
that mud's still here though.
Yeah.
That mud is still here. I do service work on appliances for the gas company I work for. And there's times we'll go down, we'll be putting in a furnace, hammering on the rafters, you know, and that mud will some of it'll still come down.
Is that right?
It's still here, yeah.
Still around.
Still around.
When you've lost just about everything but the shirt on your back, where do you turn for help? For thousands of Steuben County residents, that help could be found at the Salvation Army.
At first, the line was endless. There was no end to that line. There was no end to that line, I'm telling you. They just kept coming and coming and coming, and we just did what we could for them.
Louise Wood of Corning has been a soldier of the Salvation Army for over 40 years, but she never had a more difficult job than listening to stories like this woman's.
We lost everything. Everything we ever had. It's all just crumbled right together.
Do you plan to rebuild?
You gotta be kidding. What are we gonna rebuild? There's nothing to rebuild.
While the Salvation Army provided food, clothing, and shelter for hundreds of the flood's homeless, one of Louise's jobs was to provide comfort and compassion.
There's a lot of people asking for prayer, and a lot of them had people that they was concerned about, and I was glad that I was able to be in that capacity too, because they knew me, I knew them, and I sort of talked. And even kill. And I said, well, the Lord will help you get back. I says, just keep plugging away, just keep going.
Louise and Carol Allen help prepare 800 meals per day from this kitchen at the Corning Salvation Army. Their foresight in filling everything in sight, including the bag-lined wastebasket with clean water before the flood wiped out the city water system, kept their shelter in business. Hundreds of people went through the doors of the Corning Salvation Army looking for help after the flood, and those doors stayed open 24 hours a day for every day for 2 to 3 months after the flood.
I mean, when it first happened, understand, we were here and open before anybody else. And we saw a lot of people come in, you know, just very distraught. I think that was hard. Because, you know, and even at that time, some people were getting hit before we really knew what was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And we'd go get them and bring them in and try to give them a little comfort. And I think it was the helplessness. But once it happened, and once our brothers and sisters in the Salvation Army knew about it, we had tractor trailers waiting to come in with supplies as soon as they opened the roads, clothing, food, and things. I can tell you there were days, and we didn't know at 1 o'clock what we were having for supper at 6. But I can tell you the Lord met that need, and different Salvation Army and different people. People right here in the city who lost all their power and their freezers were defrosting. They brought that whole freezer of meat to us.
And merchants helped cook that meat by providing propane tanks for this oven. The regular natural gas lines were shut down by the flood.
Everybody pitched in. I don't know as we've ever seen that spirit since, to that extent. And maybe it's because we had to survive. But everybody helped each other. Everybody was concerned about each other. The pettiness of life left, and it was good fellowship type of thing. We really were concerned about everybody.
One thing I kept hearing, Carl, from the people in Corning as we talked to them about the flood was how relieved they were when Amory Houghton made his radio address a few days after the flood.
Well, it was a turning point for many people. Amo was chairman of the Glassworks, as it was known then, and he made it clear that the Glassworks would stay in Corning. And that meant people would still have their jobs and a steady paycheck while they worked to rebuild their homes.
The WCLI and WCBA Emergency Flood Network is pleased to present at this time a special statement by Amory Houghton, Jr., chairman of Corning Glassworks. Mr. Houghton. Thank you, George. Other than mourning with the families who have lost almost 20 people at the latest count, it really is still too early to assess the loss, both in human lives and in property. But several things come quite clear. This was a disaster of the first order for our community. Possibly the worst flood in its intensity ever to hit our part of the world. That more people weren't drowned is a miracle, particularly in view of the suddenness with which the flood struck. Every single person I've talked to has not only been full of sorrow, obviously great sorrow, but also full of determination. And this, of course, is the underlying spirit upon which all hope for this community is based. We're not licked. We're going to bounce back. I'm going to ask the directors of the Corning Glassworks Foundation tomorrow morning for a substantial sum of money possibly as much as $400,000. And the purpose of this money will be to enlist and support the work of a large group of young people in this valley to help those who simply can't help themselves, to dig out from the ravages of the flood. This will involve possibly over 300 young people and will continue throughout the entire summer.
Tom Cosgrove has worked for Corning Incorporated for 31 years, Mary Lou Bellis for 40. They both remember that speech by Amory Houghton. They also remember the very intense feelings the flood created.
I think the magnitude of the water was really overwhelming. And I know the night before Thursday when I left the office, the jitney car that takes people back and forth, Kenny Clark drove it at that time. He drove me over to the house because it was raining over at Crystal Gardens. And I said, I'll see you tomorrow, good Lord willing. Well, I saw him Friday afternoon, or whatever, they dumped us off at the old railroad station. He was in there with a long, lost look, and like everybody else, was just, like Tom says, we were in shock, really. And where do you go from here? Will I have a home when we get, this is all over? Will my possessions be gone? You know, it's quite a feeling to wonder.
Same thing you ran into?
Yeah, helpless feeling. When we were up on the hill, of course, we could look across, and everybody had the binoculars out, but nobody could tell the scope of the damage from up there. You could see the water, but it looked like, well, you know, it might be running down the street. Nobody had the ideas that it was going to be in somebody's second floor, that houses would be, you know, completely gutted inside and that kind of thing. It looked pastoral almost from up there, but you knew, you know, there was something wrong over there, but just the scale of it was hard to judge. And so everybody just followed, geez, you know, if I was over there, I could make a difference. But
Mary Lou spent several weeks in Rochester working on cleaning the mud and grime from Corning Incorporated files.
Well, they loaded the files in plastic bags and put them on the tractor trailer. And I hopped on the tractor trailer, and we went to Rochester to Kodak. And I think the Kodak officials were quite surprised when they saw the mess. But I was there for about 2 months, and they hired extra people to come in and go through the negatives and wash them off. And they put a special chemical to keep the infection down, or the poison down and all that. And I stayed with the friends up there, and they told me that when I left, the odor, the special odor that comes from the flood, was still there for a long time afterwards in the plaza. Were you aware that the company hired photographers to take pictures of all the people's damaged homes? And they gave them free copies to use for their SBA loans and things. And we handed them out in our area in the Grant Building. And we noticed that the older people seemed to take it better than the younger people.
Why do you think that was?
Maybe because they had more experience of hardships, and could look, you know, just took it for granted that things were going to be okay, and maybe younger people were impatient. I don't know.
I think Amo's speech was the other thing that really stands out in my mind.
Which came after the flood?
Yes, a couple days after. Dispelled a lot of rumors, and really gave us a boost, especially guys who are in the plant trying to get it back in operation. Rumor mill was really cranking up, and nobody knew what was going to happen. It was such a big change that I think one thing it did for us was made us aware that change isn't fatal. Big change isn't fatal. It's different, it's hard, it's frustrating, but it's not fatal.
And I think it's made us aware we need each other, too.
Absolutely.
A couple of other quick notes from talking to Tom and Mary Lou, Carl. Tom said that the women of the Twin Tiers didn't get the credit they deserved during the flood. As he put it, the men would go to work, leaving the women behind to, well, he put it this way, hoe out the house. But when the men came home, there was always a warm supper on the table and, of course, some clean clothes. And Tom also said that the lines between management and the rank and file of the glassworks almost completely disappeared as everyone worked to get the glassworks rebuilt. Now, that's something I also heard from Congressman Amory Houghton, and we'll hear from the congressman a little bit later on.
All right, but first we're going to have to head downriver to Big Flats, and you'll hear something only 11 people have known about until now. When we come back, you'll hear how close Big Flats came to being blown off the map during the flood as the rains kept falling.
And he had just gotten home shortly before the flood hit from work. And he was just getting to sleep when he heard a noise on the front porch. Went to his bedroom window, looked out. The front porch was totally covered with water. Got my mother up. Me and my brother Chris shared a bedroom off the living room. Came in, got us up. And then he went down in the basement where two brothers of mine were sleeping. Got them up, and just as they got to the top step, the water broke through. So if he would have been a minute later, they would have been gone in the flood.
The revolutionary 92.5 Cruise Master. See it now at Coon Travel Coach. So new, so different, you won't believe it. Lower weight, lower height, less overhang, and no engine noise. Fully equipped right from the factory. Just think, the Cruise Master is only 10 feet 6 inches and still has basement storage. Enclosed heated holding tanks, too. This Cruise Master must be near perfect. Take Route 17 west to Corning, then Route 414 north, 12 miles to Coon Travel Coach Beaver Dams.
Cancers of the colon and digestive system are deadly, unless found and diagnosed early. Only one local hospital has the technology to increase the diagnostic viewing area from this 1-inch circle 100-fold. St. Joseph's, recognized for quality in the top 10% among the nation's hospitals.
Hello, I'm Buddy Cutler from Cutler's Paint and Carpet Center, and I'd like to welcome you to our new store. As of June 8th, we have officially opened our doors at 33 West William Street in Corning, and we invite everyone to stop by and visit our new, improved facility. As an extra incentive, we are offering special savings on carpet, linoleum, ceramic, and wallpaper. So hurry into Cutler's, West William Street, Corning.
At GE, we have an idea that could help reduce carbon dioxide emissions. An idea that could save power plants 3 million tons of coal a year and 1 million barrels of oil. GE Energy Choice Lights. If we all change to these lights, we'd conserve our resources, and you could save enough on your electric bill to all but pay for the bulbs. GE Energy Choice. No wonder the light bulb is the symbol for a brilliant idea.
Of course, during the flood, emergency crews spent hundreds of hours without rest answering calls and helping evacuate flood victims. In Big Flats, 11 of those emergency workers have kept a secret for 20 years.
The secret of how close Big Flats came to literally being blown off the map. Amelia Centinello talked with two of those rescue workers.
Some of them were collapsing, and we tried to get everybody we possibly could into the fire hall.
Meet Leslie Frost and Jay Rhodes. Leslie was the fire chief of Big Flats Fire Department when the flood hit in '72, and that was the year Jay became a member of the department after helping out during the flood.
The biggest worry and the biggest problem we had was the fuel farms on the west side of Big Flats rupturing and letting millions of gallons of fuel oil down through town, and gasoline also.
Plus gas mains busted underneath the one bridge too.
Yeah.
So it did leak?
Yeah.
Leak.
The house at the tanks up there.
We closed the town for 5 days. Everybody else in the area could get back in and start cleaning up. We had to close the town for 5 days to make sure that it was safe to go back in because of the fuel and the gasoline.
They had pockets right behind my house on Earth Street. Yeah. You wouldn't want to throw a match out there, but boof.
We had another real bad scare. We had 50 bags of ammonium nitrate at the soil conservation farm. And we called Cornell to find out what it may do if it got wet. And they said if it gets wet and it turns orange, 1 pound was equivalent to a ton of TNT. So at that time, I asked for volunteers. 10 guys volunteered to go up and get those bags out. Got them on the road and split them open so that they wouldn't, be in them. And they split them open and then came back out. Because I remember one fellow I talked to, and he was burnt all the way around his mask from that stuff. That was touchy. But nobody ever knew that. Nobody. Only those 10 people and myself
And who
knew that.
used to
They
work
could have
there.
blown that town right off the map. We never lost a person. We got everybody out of that town, and
A lot of people didn't want to go. They didn't believe
some
it was
of them
gonna.
stayed with it.
They said that we've had floods there before. What was it, 32 or something, or
46?
46, and people were just. They won't get that high. We're lucky we did get the people out.
My wife and myself lost everything we had in the flood. But we're still together. But every day, something comes up, and it reverts back to that. You try to forget, but you can't. It's something else. I don't know what.
Some chilling words about how close Big Flats came to a major disaster. And of course, some words of strength, too, about how the flood brought one husband and wife closer together. We move downriver now to Elmira. No lives were lost here.
No lives were lost because the city learned something from the flood of 1946. They had emergency plans ready to go. Some of those evacuation plans were put into effect at St. Joseph's Hospital. 200 patients had to be evacuated and sent to Arnott Ogden. They couldn't be sent home because no one knew what their homes would be like. And the emergency plans helped firefighters and police maintain order. There was some looting, yes, but not much. And there's not much you can do when 3 of the 4 firehouses in the city are underwater and fire engulfs a home.
These people probably expect to come back and find their house full of mud, and they ain't gonna find no house at all, you know. And I was across the street on the first floor of the school building when the fire had broke out. The whole top part of the roof was burning, and it caught the telephone pole. And as I was in this first room, the first window of the school building, the transformers were blowing up. The electric wires were hitting the water. At the time, there was approximately 40 people in the school building, about 16 children, the rest were adults. And they had to evacuate us out the side window at the far end of the building to keep away from the electric wires. And it's terrible. Everybody just have to start all over again, I guess. Keep spirits up. And just like the first time, work twice as hard, I guess. This is the first time I've ever been through anything like this. And you hear it on radio reports, other places, but you only experience after 5 minutes, you know. But this is something that you'll remember for the rest of your life, and hope to God you never see another one, really.
Is that window broken from looters?
No, it is not. We understand that the state police came and opened up the window for the purpose of getting milk and food to the patients at the hospital.
Has there been much looting, do you know?
No, I have no idea. I'm under the impression that there has not been.
What do your orders read about this intersection?
Just not to let anyone pass through this intersection without a pass from the police department or the DPW. And just to keep all people away, generally.
How many people live down there?
I don't know. I'm not from Elmira. I'm from Binghamton.
How long have you been standing guard here?
About 2 hours now.
And the guns loaded?
Well, we're not obliged to say.
Planning ahead paid off for Elmira officials. A flood emergency plan drawn up 8 years before the flood designated Elmira College as the major evacuation center for the North Side, housing more than 1,000 people. One of the volunteers helping out in the kitchen was Isabelle Rhode of Elmira.
I remember making hundreds of pieces of toast. I don't know how much that added to the, but it was necessary. It gave me something to do. And it was very interesting. And also people were here with animals. In fact, one of our children was bitten and had to have a shot. But you know, things were organized, became organized. And I remember one lady who had a bird, and she wanted water for her bird. And we were not allowed to drink the water out of the fountains. So, and everyone was a little annoyed until we found out that was the only thing that she had left. She'd lost her home. Her home had gone down the river, and that was her only possessions.
While Isabelle worked on the North Side, Red Cross volunteer nurse Hazel Thompson helped take charge at Southside High School.
So we got there, and the gym was filled with people. There were people in the cafeteria, down in the basement. The water started to come in the basement, so we all went to the gym. It was pandemonium. No one was in charge. So I said, I got to do something. I'm a Red Cross nurse, and I've had my disaster training, so I had to do something. We set up cots and things and got everybody all settled down when the water started coming in the gym.
So the center was then moved to the Pine City School, where it had to become all things to all people.
Yeah, we had mental problems. We had problems between families out there. And you ran into all kinds of situations. And see, we had a nursing home on the south side that was flooded. So we got a lot of their patients. And then the people that were in the nursing home didn't come with them. So we had to take care of them. So we had to set up like an infirmary there and take care of all those people. And everybody worked together.
Yes.
No matter if you were homeless, everybody pitched in and worked. Even the little kids, they'd come up and say, what can I do? I think they emptied the wastebasket 6-7 times a day. But you gave them something to do.
I think one thing that I remember is how wonderful the teenagers were.
Yes, they were.
The teenagers were on cleanup. They would work from dusk till dawn, and they really they were just shining. They were wonderful.
As for their biggest challenge, for Hazel, surprisingly enough, it wasn't the flood or all those people asking for help. It was trying to get her job back.
I worked at Vanderbogart, and they said that I lost my job because they told me I didn't come in to work. I had gone down to them and asked them if I could have my 2 weeks vacation. And they said, no, we expect you to be in here to work. But I had 5.5 feet of water through my house. I had no clothes, nothing that I could go to work with. They did have a nurse that was working there that lived in Horseheads, so she could get to work. So I went back on a Friday and I said, do I have my job? And they said, no, you told us your volunteer work was more important than your job, which I had never told them that. Everybody worked out there, no matter who you were, whether you had a job or whether you didn't have a job.
Officials today at Kennedy Valve say none of the people involved with Hazel's firing are at the plant anymore. Hazel says don't worry about it. She got a better job with someone else. She also says she got a better appreciation of the volunteer spirit in Elmira.
They didn't have to ask for volunteers. No. They just came and volunteered their time. And
somehow you had this extra energy to do it.
Yes, you did.
When Manny Panosian walks into his store at Langdon Plaza, he's reminded of how far he's come 20 years after the flood. But I'll never forget what he lost. When the water came over the dike in '72, the south side of Elmira got hit hard. At one point, the water was ceiling high at Panosian's street of shops.
We came downtown and saw how bad it was. We had no idea it was as bad as it was.
Looking through old newspaper clippings brings back memories for Panosian. His words made headlines. If you run away, you're a loser. That's what he said 20 years ago. It still rings true today.
It was a roll up your sleeve and try to save yourself. Posture was really worth it. It was much better, really. I'm glad we did it that way. Because we didn't know any different, and it was a matter of being determined and going to make things come back the best we could. We needed every nickel we could get because we thought we were just completely gone. So if this was at that time, let's say an $8 pair of sneakers, we could clean it up a little bit and maybe you'd pay us $2 for it. And that was what we thought we'd have to work with.
The man drying out these sneakers is Mick Talada. You can still find him working at Panosian's today.
Washing out the Converse sneakers and hanging them out to dry, along with some other friends that were probably inside digging out through the moldy boxes by this time to bring them out to me. It was an experience I don't want to go through again. I think that there was a lot of other merchants that were blessings. I mean, that did survive and did continue to go on because it was a disaster. I mean, let's put it that way.
Well, as of yesterday, before the flood, I had a store in downtown Omaha, and I haven't been down to see it, but they tell me it got hit pretty badly. There's always a brighter day, and we just all have to help one another. I've seen many people who have been in much more serious condition than I am. Mine is only a material loss, and many of them are separated from families or they've lost someone, and of course this is something that money can't buy.
Remember this man? He's Norman Heyman. He used to run the Mark Twain men's shop. Norman moved to Florida. No one is sure if he rebuilt after the flood.
Things have certainly changed for Mr. Panosian's over the years. Manny did rebuild on South Main Street after the flood, but years later decided to bring his street of shops all under one roof here at Langdon Plaza.
We got really hurt for the 2 or 3 months while the thing was being recovering, basically, and of course, then the tearing down and building and whatever did happen took time, and it got some people out of the habit of coming downtown because the mall didn't get impacted negatively at all. I think we all learn and grow when that sort of thing happens and we come out of it all right. I think we're stronger in the end.
Well, that applies not only to businesses but to people. And we've seen it again and again talking to people about the flood.
One thing we've heard over and over from people who went through the flood is that the only thing they lost in the flood that could not be replaced are the pictures of their families.
That's right. We have a reporter on our staff who has just one picture of himself when he was a baby. Scott Nichols and his mother sat and talked about the flood.
What do you remember about the night of the flood?
Well, the night of the flood had been raining most of the day, and I didn't think anything of it. I went off to my night job. You stayed home with a babysitter. There's a few rumors around that there was high water, but nobody paid any attention. So I just came home as usual at 10 o'clock, sent the babysitter home, and was going to get ready for bed. But I'm very lucky. The people in this neighborhood always watched out for us because they knew you and I lived here alone. The man across the street came to the door at about 10:30 and said very matter-of-factly, the water is going to go over the dike. Your house is going to be flooded. You and the little boy should get out now. And, you know, I just kind of looked at him. I couldn't believe he was saying this, and he was very serious. He said to me, pack up all your belongings that you want to take, and he said, you know, he said, you might not be the first one to get back in your home, and you might be out of your home for a while. So take something that's very important to you and all your papers, take them with you now.
What was the scariest thing you remember?
I wasn't really frightened because I'd never gone through anything like that before. We packed up our things and we started across town to Huffman Street where your grandparents lived. And when I hit the bridge at Madison Avenue, it was about 11, and it was quite dark, so I couldn't see the water. But once I got on the bridge, you could hear the water. You could hear it roar. You could just feel it hit the bottom of the bridge. And when you're there alone and you've got a 2-year-old you're responsible for, it's a very, very frightening feeling. I didn't know if I was going to make it to the other side. That's when the flood became a reality to me. Getting across the bridge was one of the longest moments in my life. Once we got across the bridge, I just seemed to relax, and I realized this is it. Nothing can happen now. No matter what happens to the house, it can be fixed. Something can be replaced. We're safe now, and that's what mattered.
But not everything could be replaced. This is the only baby picture of me that we have left.
This is the only one. You can see it's pretty well damaged, and there's not much left of it, but this is the only one that survived. Unfortunately, I didn't grab all the things I should have.
It was a few weeks before my mother and I got to move back into our house, and cleanup took longer than that. Mom, when you finally got to move back into the house, what's one of the weirdest things or the strangest things that you remember about the cleanup?
I think the strangest thing is that this cellar had at least 2 feet of mud in it. And the upstairs floor, of course, had a lot of silt left in it. The only way you could actually get it out is to take a garden hose, bring it in your home, hose down your floors. And I don't think I'll ever forget that feeling. You had to take the register grates off and stick the hose down in your air ducts in order to clean all the mud out. So when you finally got your furnace hooked back up, you wouldn't have all that mud still in there. And that's something you don't ever forget, bringing a garden hose in your home to clean it.
When we come back, we'll visit with a family that is a little luckier than most. They have 8mm film of the flood and its effect on them.
That's right. And as we head into the northern tier, we'll visit downtown Athens to find out what happened there as the rains kept falling.
People were coming into the house slow but sure. We had 11 people in after
11 people total in the house with the water, when the water was coming up. And then I thought of the Mr. and Mrs. Brewster, and they had a ranch. And I told my wife, Marianne, I said, well, someone's got to go get them. And she said, well, you better start. So I had a large rope. We went across the street, and they were looking out the door. And they had a ranch house, and I was afraid if it went up to the roof, they wouldn't be able to get out. So they were waiting in the doorway, so I tied a rope around them, and I wouldn't let them out of the house till we put the rope on them. And out of the house, they were coming down the steps, and the wall collapsed under the house by the steps, and they started to slide down. And with the help of the rope, I kept them out, and then we finally got them across the street and into the house and dried off.
10. Now, there are families all over the Twin Tiers who went through the flood, and they were evacuated not once, but 2 or 3 times.
Well, that's right. Mary Alice Rosko is in Athens recently, spending time with one of those families.
What do you remember most about it, the whole thing?
Having to evacuate and finding a place that when we went to my sister's house. First night they thought it was going to get up there, so we ended up sleeping at the church. And then coming back and all the work cleaning up.
I wasn't scared. I was too little to be scared. It was very exciting to me. I remember we were packing to leave, and I was real excited to get to pack my suitcase. We were going to go someplace. And I looked outside and saw all the water out back. And then we went to my aunt's. And I remember we had to evacuate my aunt's and go to the church.
And all I could think about when all this water was coming up, and these 3 little kids, like she was just turned 4, and she was 2, or Julie was 2, and Rob was like 6, 7 months old. And all I could think was, this water's coming in, you know, I had these 3 little kids, I just had to get out of here.
See, you look up to those windows, and it was up there, so it was coming in the windows. That's what I meant by on the garage. It was coming right up. You know, it didn't cover the whole windows, but enough so it was coming through the windows there.
Then all the mess you had trying to get rid of stuff, you just threw it out there, and scavengers took some, and the trucks come and hauled the rest of it away. I don't know where they took it all, but there was piles, huge piles, because most of it was not, people couldn't use again. There were a lot of sightseers going around, yeah.
Well, how did that make you feel? That these people...
When we were downtown, we were the sightseers, you know, because we wanted to see what the rest of the town looked like. I remember Mrs. Horton, who had a cigar store downtown, said, well, take a good look, because you may never see us again, you know, because she was quite an elderly woman who was still in business down there. And she was right. She got cleaned up and never went back in business. She just cleaned up and got the business ready to go and sold the building.
Oh, the downtown changed. Yeah, there's a lot of changes down. There's not as many changes in this area because we didn't get it as bad as below the tracks. But, yeah, the town is different than it was before. They got a new borough hall, new fire station.
Once they built the dams up above us and they built the dikes down here, we haven't had any water since. And everybody dropped the flood insurance, so we're about due for it probably.
June 23rd, 1972. It was raining just as it is today. But on that day, the Chemung River was swollen. And at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the dam broke. Within minutes, the floodwaters hit this section of downtown Athens and put just about every business under 6 feet of water. Frank Shaughnessy is one business owner who got flooded out. His pharmacy was destroyed. Everything was lost. How did that feel?
Devastating. Devastating. You're totally lost. Nobody had flood insurance. The people who lived here said, oh, this can't happen to us. You know, it has never happened before, and you just don't think it will.
But it did happen, and it tested the mettle of all the downtown merchants. But before Shaughnessy could think about rebuilding, or even cleaning up, he thought about his customers, people who would need medicine.
Yeah, did a superb
but
job.
The flood had destroyed all his
had
supplies.
all the windows all boarded. I came back in Saturday, saw the devastation. Sunday, I was at the wholesalers in Binghamton buying stuff so that people could have their insulin when they needed it and things of this nature.
Once he was restocked, Shaughnessy changed location and rebuilt his drugstore from the ground up. Connie Douglas also remembers the flood. She was a nurse, and she spent most of her time in Robert Packer Hospital.
the girls were working, you know, most of the shifts. You'd go home for a shift and then come back because they were bringing in from nursing homes and different areas. Had gone all the way through Twan and everything. I don't remember where everybody was coming from, but there were lots of beds and lots of patients. And
She remembers slipping and sliding on the mud-covered sidewalks when she came back home, and Douglas remembers how her apartment smelled.
like a river. It was pretty bad. You didn't know if you were going to run into a river snake or, you know, whatever, too. There was always that, you know, squeezy feeling that, you know, what else is moving around in the mud.
Neither of these people let the flood defeat them, but others were too old to rebuild, or they just lost too much.
The business next to me, he never came back. He went down to see his sister in Virginia and never came back. The guy on the corner, 2 doors up, had a little 5 and 10 cent store. He went to Florida.
But in the face of tragedy, the human spirit seems to make all things possible.
There was a lot of good feeling along with, you know, all the pain of, you know, losing possessions and losing your house and all that. But there was a lot of community. The people worked together and shoveled each other out, and there was a lot of that. And I think that's what people remember.
You know, the one thing you hear over and over from everyone who talks about the flood is their recollection of the spirit of the community.
When we come back, we'll talk to Congressman Amory Houghton. We'll talk to him about his address 4 days after the flood. And he talks about the rebuilding of the Twin Tiers and the strength of the community as the rains kept falling.
The business used to be on this spot, and I remember the first time I saw it after the flood, it was a disaster. Everything was moved around, counters were moved, gone out the window, mud all over the place. It really looked sad. But I didn't give up. I made up my mind. I'll clean up and keep on going, stay in business.
I've always said I think the flood was the greatest thing to ever happen to Corning. It cleaned it out. It caused a lot of hardship, caused a lot of heartache, but it also caused the community, gave the community an opportunity to say, look, it's all washed out. Let's rebuild and build the city that we want to build. They found the right leadership to direct this. The company and the community worked together and made Corning considerably different and much better.
One of the things you've probably noticed about listening to the people in this program is they all seem to have a positive memory of the flood. Something good came out of it. They focus on that. To commemorate the anniversary of the flood, the 20th anniversary, one of the things the Rockwell Museum here in Corning is doing is sponsoring a contest. They want people to name that island. The winner will be announced on June 27th. It's a positive statement that, hey, we're still here. The flood didn't hurt us. Congressman Amory Houghton was the chairman of Corning Incorporated. His office was just down the road about a quarter mile 20 years ago. He says the one thing he remembers from 20 years ago and the flood is the spirit of the community, the positive response that the community had.
I think the image was the people way down on 2nd and 1st and 3rd Street. And I tell you what I mean. We had a fund. And that was, and it got to be well over $1 million. Private money given to help rebuild the hospitals and the churches and some of the really damaged sort of general institutions around here. Not the glassworks, they were going to do it on their own. We didn't touch these people. We didn't even ask these people down here because their houses had been hurt. They had been ruined. They were furious. By gosh, we're a member of this community, and just because our houses were damaged, it doesn't mean we're not going to be part of this fund. We want to contribute just as much as anybody who was way up in the hill or over in the north side or out in Panda Post that didn't get hurt on this thing. I mean, to me, it almost symbolized the spirit. I'd never seen that before. I'd seen variations of it, but here was a community which had 16 dead. Very, very good friend of mine died. He was a volunteer fire department down here. Houses ruined, hospital, churches, $200 million in damage. I mean, huge. In absolute shock. And then all of a sudden, rather than tearing apart, and as so many times we do in this country, and pointing fingers at somebody, you know, that's the biggest game in town now. You point a finger at somebody and says it's your fault. We all pull together, I don't know how it happened, but it did. And you just sort of got caught up with the spirit of it. And we were better than we had any right to be.
Many people in the southern tier have another memory of the flood, the memory of Amory Houghton's radio address. While the damage was still being assessed, he took to the airwaves and reassured everyone that Corning Incorporated would stay in Corning. There are those who say Houghton's words were a turning point. It helped give the community the will to rebuild.
Well, somebody has, everybody has his own part to play. And since I was chairman of the Glassworks at the time, people were saying, what's the Glassworks going to do? Are they going to leave town? Are they going to pull back? Or are they going to just have a sort of a minor manufacturing operation up here? What are they going to do? So somebody had to make that statement, and I guess I was the guy that had to make it. And I remember having a meeting up in my living room, and we had all the top fellas in the Glassworks. And a fellow called Dave Leibson, who I've got a tremendous respect for, and we were talking about these issues, and he said, I'm for the Big Bang approach. He said, people are ready now to hear a sure, crisp message of hope. And I think we ought to do that. So we all got together and pieced this thing, and that was the result of it. The old-timers, the people who were not in the headlines, the people who really carry this company, rose to the surface and took over again. And that's the secret, to me, of this community and this company. There's a cadre of people who don't seek any publicity, but are there and are the doers. And they're not acknowledged most of the time, except in a time like this.
For Congressman Houghton, it was everyone in the southern tier who simply did what needed to be done.
You go to a Y in the road and you have a crisis, and you either deteriorate or you become far better. You multiply in terms of all the good things that are there but never have been sort of brought out before. We took that left-hand road. But we had a focus at that point. And out of tragedy came something far better. And we put the tragedy behind us and built on it. And that was the thing I think that maybe people would smile about.
And people do smile when they talk about the flood, Carl.
And a few people gave us the reason for that. They said simply, it's because we survived it.
See, I'm patriotic. I've had the flag out every day. We've had a major disaster, and we're taking it like normal American people, trying to do our best. Now, what else can you do?
Long as I remember. Out up in the fable, watch the tower grow. Still I wonder who's down the rain.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Alice Rosko, 18 News. Here's what we'll have for you tonight at 11.
The Roman Catholic Church is talking about allowing women to become priests. We'll tell you what local Catholics think about women being ordained. New York State sheriffs are being asked to boycott a rap album. We'll tell you why. And how many cans does it take to build a skyscraper? Some people in Corning are going to find out tonight. We'll have those stories and much more for you tonight at 11. I'll see you then.
Enjoy the great taste of Snapple natural juices, sodas, fruit drinks, and real brewed iced teas. Snapple, made from the best stuff on earth.
There are lots of ways to serve.